Jonathan, it's so good to see you again.
Great to be with you again.
We haven't spoken for what seems like, I think, around about 12 months in this format, face-to-face. I've been following your posts and I've been wondering when it was that we were going to be able to make a time to get together. So I'm glad that we got around to it. I like this opportunity to chat to you because there's so much to catch up on, and I think we always have conversations that are really informative, and we have conversations that are really useful for other people. And I get a lot out of our conversations because I've been feeling a little bit off the last few months, and that's really why I haven't been that prolific in doing too many things and getting in touch and connecting with a lot of people. But I've just started to get back on that on the horse, so to speak. And in the last few months, I've done a fair amount of interviews, and I've interviewed some amazing people. There's about 3 interviews that are going up before this one. So I'd love to know what you've been up to. What have you been doing?
I have been diligently working at this writing. My blog has taken on quite a few followers now, and a lot of people throughout the world have contacted me with personal situations based on the writings that I've put out there. And what I try to do is I try to write articles that are obviously based on health, but that come from perspectives where a lot of the people would never have had these type of exposures before, because the information I write, rather than stating my opinions, basically what I do is I find hidden information about health issues that the average consumer isn't made aware of. And my goal is not so much to convince people what they should or should not be doing, as much as trying to make sure they at least have the information from all sides so they can make the best and most intelligent, informed decision possible for themselves.
Yeah, it's really
so
important.
I've been doing that. I've been running my begal every single day for multiple walks and runs.
No, he's been running you.
And I've been exercising, and in all honesty, I've been living the life that I suggest other people consider seeking out.
Yeah, that's challenging. You know, I have this idea of what my life should be, and it definitely shouldn't be driving an hour and a half to a job every day and then an hour and a half home, and, you know, making money for somebody else and not getting rewarded, or not feeling like I'm not getting rewarded, or feeling like I'm not contributing, or I'm not living my desires or my passion. But, you know, most of us get caught up in that. And I think part of where the topic we're going to talk about is weight loss today, but part of the weight loss and all the things that creep up in our lives that one day we look in the mirror and we think, oh, I'm not sure if I like what I'm looking at. And I'm not saying that from a visual perspective, you know, I don't want to do the whole, oh, I don't like myself because I look fat. No, none of that. But it's like why I got to that point. How did I get to that point? And I think a lot of people also don't realize how they got into the job they don't like. They don't realize how they're traveling an hour and a half every day to get to work and come home, and they're spending 3 hours in a car. So I suppose the topic that we're going to talk about is going to have things that people can understand about, firstly, weight loss or weight gain, but also they're going to be able to understand that the skills in overcoming the challenges with weight gain and weight loss are also transferable in other areas of life. And this is what I love about these topics. It's not just, we're not going to talk about one thing and that solves that one thing. No, these skills are transferable. Is that how you see it?
Oh, completely. The most health issues, whether it's thyroid, whether it's obesity, whether it's cancer, we're talking about deficiencies in life. We're talking about imbalances in life. And these imbalances develop over our lives. You know, we go to school, we graduate, we go on to college. Once we graduate college, or when we graduate high school and we go out into the workforce, we're looking to earn a living.
Yeah.
We're not necessarily looking to find a career that satisfies our personal growth and development.
Yeah.
We just want to start making money.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is what leads to a lot of people finding things where they start making some money, some make real good money, and then what happens is their focus going from expansion of first graduating to actual workforce saying, now I'm making money, now I'm on the right path. But it's such a limited path because all they're talking about is money. I think I may have mentioned to you once before something I once read that made a huge impact on my life. The quote was something like, this man was so poor, the only thing he had in life was unlimited wealth. And you know, there are a lot of people out there who would say, boy, I'd kill for that. But you want to know something? Once you had it, you wouldn't kill for it. Go look at all those lottery winners. Millions and millions of dollars. And half these people either have nothing again or have been killed or live with severe depression. So what we think is important to ourselves in the long run isn't. And until we open our minds and say, let me see what I'm missing in my life that really is something I want, we're not going to achieve the life that we really want to live.
Yeah, there's a lot of millionaires that are depressed and unhappy and don't know what they're doing. They're just walking around doing the whole thing of making money, and it's not really bringing them any more enjoyment because money only buys you things. It does buy you a lot of opportunity to do the things that you like, but if you developed, if you built that bank balance by doing just the part of the day that makes money, and you haven't worked out that's, even though you're a millionaire, that's what you're still doing, you're missing out on the opportunities to experience that life that you desire, the part of the life that you were meant to have achieved when you made the money.
And you want to know something? Go take a look at the possessions that are purchased and see what kind of impact over the life of these wealthy people, what it makes compared to the wealth that people get from experiences in life. You just traveled. You went to Europe.
Yeah.
That's something that will live with you for your entire life.
Yeah.
The Jaguar that was purchased by someone will bring tremendous joy and happiness for a week, a month, a year. So if people are really looking to really live lives that are quality, that they look forward to every day, they'll look beyond possessions and they'll look into what it takes to really fulfill themselves. And that requires kind of doing a worksheet of saying, what kind of gets me excited in life? When I wake up in the morning, what do I jump out of bed thinking, I can't wait until, and then you fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Most people never do that.
Yeah. I hope what this podcast and this interview and the regular interviews with you is going to do is going to encourage people to take action before they get to that point where I got to, which was, a brain hemorrhage, a second brain hemorrhage, and then in hospital and potentially, facing life-threatening surgery, which I ended up having to have, and I almost didn't get away with it. I'm here now, and I'm grateful for the fact that I got away with it, and I'm making a lot of changes. But it had, I want to encourage people, don't let it get to that point where it's really, really dangerous and really, really scary, and you're not sure if you're going to survive something serious that occurs before you make the change. I mean, I know it's a big motivator, but it's the dumbest way. Honestly, if I have any regrets in my life, it's that I waited until the moment of near no return for me to make the change. So I hope that as we continue to talk and expand on our topic today, that people are going to understand why what I said is important and why your message is starting to get followed by people all over the world. And I noticed that you put your post up within a couple of days and it's got comments all over it. Before we go any further, let's just tell people where they can find your blog posts.
The name of the site is allabouthealthychoices.wordpress.com.
Excellent.
I think you may have to put in https:// before that. I'm just not a computer. Good with health, not a great computer person.
Yeah, you don't have to actually put that in there, but if you do, it'll be fine. So people can just type allabouthealthychoices.wordpress.com and all of Jonathan's blogs will come up and you'll see them all, and you'll see the latest one, and the latest one has a heading, Jonathan, and it says, "And now that you've lost some or all of the weight, question mark. Now what?"
Yeah, this is, something so many people strive to lose weight. It's kind of like what we complain about with the war right now over in this country, where we get involved with wars, we go in, we blow things up, but we have no plan of action. We have no, okay, now that we, quote, have won, what do we do now? We don't have an exit strategy. Most people that go to lose weight don't have a strategy. What they do is they throw things at the window and see what sticks. So what are things they throw at the window? They throw diet plans. They throw people's suggestions. That's not a way of, that's like investing and saying, I have this lump of money and I'm going to throw it at small caps. I mean, there's no strategy. You just have to hope that it works. If you actually approach life methodically and think a process through, because when we do things in life, when we succeed, it's usually through a process, not through an event. There's a big difference. A diet is an event. A diet addresses calories. It doesn't address emotions.
Right.
So if people are gaining weight because they're unhappy and they're turning to food because it's satisfying an emotional need, regardless of how much weight they lose through a diet plan, if the emotional component is not being addressed, they're going to regain that weight back. So to truly go through anything, you need a process that addresses all the different components of what's causing the problem. And this I term root cause.
Yeah.
The weight gain is the end result. It's not the root cause. So if the root cause is something that happened in childhood, that needs to be addressed. If the answer to the problem is going to be doing things you may not like to do, this means you have to create a mindset that you're prepared to live differently. You can't just turn to the one thing that you're hoping addresses the entire thing, because there is no answer like that. And this is why 95% of the people fail diets.
That's a really interesting point. Now, people are going to understand what you said about emotions, but a lot of people won't have connected the dots. Why emotions is a trigger for the end result being weight gain. Now, I know why. Let's dig into it a little bit deeper, and let's see if we can unpack what is it about emotions and food that ends up causing somebody to be, overweight.
Well, one thing is people don't realize that sugar is a major component of feel-good. I mean, sugar has already been proven more effective than cocaine at stimulating brain centers that create this feel-good response. So if people are depressed, if people are unhappy, what are they going to want to do? They're going to want to turn on those centers. Now, they're not thinking, they don't realize on a cognitive level that if I turn to sugar, this is what's going to happen. But they do know that when they eat these processed foods, these fast foods, these high sugar foods, for a short period of time, they feel better. Well, when you take drugs, illegal drugs, for a short period of time, you feel better. But it's not going to create a long-term solution. In fact, it's going to complicate the problem long-term. It makes it that much more difficult because now you're going to be building an addiction to the substance that's making you feel good that I'm now telling you we have to get you away from. Makes it twice as difficult.
And people aren't even aware that, A, they're addicted. They haven't worked out that it was the emotional incident that happened many, many years ago that they may not even cognitively remember that made them feel bad, and they just happened to be eating a sweet at that point in time. And that made them feel better. That very short amount of time made them feel better. And now that created a neural pathway, a pattern that was reinforced later on in life, maybe a month, a week later. And then all of a sudden, they're finding themselves having a desire when they're feeling bad to have something sweet to satiate their desire, their need to overcome a bad emotion. And they've got there, and it's taken a long time to get to that point where they're 35 and 100 pounds overweight, for example. They didn't just happen overnight. So this solution of going on a crash diet is not going to address the long-term problem, and therefore they won't know that when they are then having another emotional experience, that they've automatically gone to a sweet and eaten a sweet, and they haven't even connected the two together. So how do we begin to support somebody to have these awarenesses, to become aware of what the root cause of their sugar addiction was?
Well, different people have different needs, but what you have to do is, like I said, when I start with people, the very first thing I tell them is we have to get a mindset here. In that recent post that I put up, one of the things I put down was to create a goal, a successful goal for weight loss. The one thing you can't make your goal is losing weight. And people say, wait a second, that's exactly what I want to do, and you're telling me I can't make that my goal. And I say, exactly. Because if you're let's pretend you want to lose 25 pounds, 50 pounds, 100 pounds, whatever it is. Let's pretend you're successful. Let's pretend you do it. The day after you do it, what's your motivation now for continuing what you've done? Yeah. Not only don't you have motivation, you're now going to reward yourself with old destructive patterns of behavior because you were so good for so long. You deserve it. You're entitled to it. And you know what? All your friends and family around you are going to say, absolutely, you're right. You deserve it. You should do it this time. It's no big deal if you do it this time. Well, would you say the same thing to an alcoholic? Oh, come on. You've been sober for 20 years. You can have one glass of wine. You deserve it.
Reward yourself.
People would say, no, that's crazy. It's the exact same thing with food. People need to understand this. And they don't.
And why is it that we as parents, and I used to do this, I don't do it now, why is it that as parents, back in the day when I was not as aware of the challenges around food and nutrition, did I used to treat my children, when they've done something amazing, I used to treat them with something crap like McDonald's?
The reason we do it is twofold. One, we know the kid likes it. So what we do is, in our own minds, we're saying, my child did something I want to reward them for, so I'm going to reward them with something I know they like and enjoy. Right. Now, it's just as easy to reward them with something they like and enjoy that's healthy. If you gave a child a smoothie and mixed in different flavors, it would be a malted. They'd like it just as much, but instead of putting toxic substances into their body, they'd actually be feeding their body nutritional needs. So we're just kind of in this mindset, we were raised this way, and we just pass it from generation to generation. I always tell people, does it make sense to reward a child or an adult with something that is simply destructive? When people think in those terms, they say, well, of course not. And say, well, that's exactly what you're doing. Why would you turn to something that simply harms your system, that makes you worse off, that makes you now have to work twice as hard to get to a level of subpar? And the average person says, I just never thought in those terms. But at the same time, they don't change behavior.
I had an interesting conversation with an amazing lady who has an awesome husband and some beautiful children, and one of the children has allergies, and the conversation some time ago was around about some of the things that might be causing those allergies, not necessarily what they think it is. It could be some other things, and we came up with some possibilities. The conversation was going really well, and the issue was potentially it was gluten and potentially dairy for this child. So it was skin allergies, eczema, that kind of thing. And what we did was the discussion went, try taking those particular items out of the diet and see what happens. And the response was, yes, but it's hard. And I wondered what part of it was hard. So I kept asking, and I found out that what was hard was, it wasn't hard for the mum to do that specifically. It was hard for her to deal with the response that she would get from her child when a child said, but I really like cereal, or I really like toast, or I really like whatever. And the mum couldn't have that conversation with the child to do that part, which was hard. Instead, she was, feeding the child the thing that the child liked, because she couldn't make the child feel bad by taking away something that was not nutritious and causing problems. And my pretty harsh but comment coming from a compassionate, loving place was, stop being the block between your child's recovery from this condition. And now I've turned the attention away from the condition, from the child, and isolated what the problem was to that child's recovery, and it was the mother. And it was not her intention.
Of course. Yeah, and something, I had a family practice before I retired. So I had these conversations all the time, and what I used to educate parents on was, don't convince your child that they need to eat healthy food. Now it's a battle. What you do is you actually create a list of healthy foods and tasty things, and you tell your child, something, you're a big boy and girl. I think it should be your responsibility to decide what you think you want. And what I've done is I've created a whole list here of all things you can choose from. And what we're going to do is we're going to work on creating menus from now on. And this is how we're going to start eating. We're going to let you participate. In fact, we're even going to let you help prepare the foods. So now you're getting a family activity, so it's a positive thing. It's more interaction between parent and child. The child is now learning foods without realizing they're learning foods. And what they're doing is they're eating healthy foods, and they're not fighting anymore for these unhealthy foods. And as you start saying, if they start saying, well, how come I'm not getting this? You explain to them in terms that you care about them, and these things are actually harmful. So what we're doing is we're substituting out things that you like for these older products that we used to have that we didn't realize were harmful, but now we do realize. Children aren't stupid.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is they learn to accept this, and then they start sharing it with their friends. And all of a sudden the parents' friends start calling and saying, what do you do with your child? He's telling my child how to eat. So it winds up feeding itself, and it winds up spreading a good message.
Yeah, and it's also okay for parents to say, you know what, I thought I was feeding you the right food. I thought that was something that you should be consuming, but it turns out I'm wrong, and I wanted to let you know that I made a decision that started a little while ago. This is what we did. I apologize that the decision that I made was the wrong food choice, but we've learned from that, and now we're moving on. It's okay to apologize that we're making changes, and this is the reason why we're making changes. Children need to be spoken to like adults so that they understand what it is that you're talking about, not told what to do, etc. And I've had that conversation with my teenagers about gluten and about processed sugar and all that kind of stuff, but a little bit further along the point of being able to convince them. They do know that I've made the wrong food choices in the past with them and with myself. So now they know what the right food choices are. And I've asked them to pay attention to how certain foods make them feel after they've consumed it. So at least they know that if they're going to have a McDonald's meal, then whatever happens after that, whether it's their mood, whether it's their stomach, whether it's their anxiety levels, whatever it is, that's a result of the food. So you may as well know what's going to happen if you're going to consume it. And then you are an informed consumer, and you only have, so to speak, yourself to blame. You're 100% aware of it. So I feel that works because it does make them make better decisions from time to time. And when they make that really, that McDonald's decision, and I'm saying McDonald's, but it's not always McDonald's. It can be something else. But when they make that decision, they go, oh my God, I shouldn't have eaten that. And it's very unlikely that they're going to have another one of those meals, very soon after they've had that one. So those conversations with children, even teenagers, do work, even though we can't always convince teenagers that they should do something else, right?
Sure. And you know something in general, whether it's a child or an adult, my motto is between 80 and 90% of the time, you eat the foods that your body needs, but you still provide the 10 to 20%, I call it comfort foods, that you enjoy. Because what we're talking about is lifelong or long-term solutions. You can't cut out things you like for 40 years. It's just not going to happen. Just like you're not going to exercise 7 days a week for 40 years. So my advice to all people before they start anything, whether it's exercise, nutrition, you start with something that you can stay with forever. Or don't start with it, because what you'll do is you'll be creating your own path to failure, because it'll only take you so far. So what you wind up doing is you start doing it a little bit slower. The process is a little bit slower. But you know something? A slower process provides endurance. It gives you long-term energy. You do something quick and fast loss or fast gain or fast anything, you wind up with failure. So you're much, much better off doing things slowly and constantly achieving success along the path.
Yeah, and celebrating those successes. And I'll tell you a story about how I lost weight after I had the first brain bleed. So what happened was the particular medication I was on made me put on a heck of a lot of weight. And I think I put on around about 10 kilos, which I think is 25 pounds, in the space of around 2 weeks.
Wow.
And I've rounded it up to 10 kilos so I don't have to multiply 8 kilos, because in pounds, I'm never going to get there, right? So what happened was I wanted to lose weight because I suddenly didn't fit into any of my clothes. I wasn't about to go and change my wardrobe overnight because it was only 2 weeks. And what happened was I wanted to understand how I'm going to lose this weight, but I realized that perhaps weight loss wasn't the thing for me because I wasn't allowed to exercise yet. I wasn't allowed to go to the gym. I wasn't allowed to eat, do anything. The only thing I had to influence my weight loss was food, and I didn't really know how to do that through food. But my inquiry, the reason why I got motivated in trying to understand what happened to my brain was I wanted to come off this medication, because if it had done this to me in 2 weeks, I didn't want this to continue every time I was given this medication. So I thought by the end of it, I'm going to be obese, and I can't have that, as well as trying to recover from a brain injury. So I Googled how to reduce inflammation in my brain, and reducing inflammation in the brain started via me being able to do the only thing I could do, which was changing the food that I was consuming, removing the inflammatory foods and bringing in the anti-inflammatory foods. And you wouldn't believe it, that within about a year, I had lost the majority of the weight that I'd put on without exercise. Now, we're going to talk about exercise, and that's still important, but I did it without exercise because I couldn't do it any other way.
Right.
But it took a year, and it happened without much effort because I was addressing the root cause, which was the inflammation, which meant in my brain, which meant that I didn't have to take medication, which was what I was taking, and that was causing the weight gain. So
absolutely,
it's like eating the hamburger every day, except I was eating a tablet, right?
Right.
So I avoided...
I was about to say, and the tablet itself was creating the problem. So here it's probably, I don't know which medication it was, but it was probably something to thin out or create viscosity situations so that there wouldn't be any kind of buildup of clotting. But in the process, some of the medication itself, since it was probably multiple medications, was creating inflammatory changes. So, it's having a plus and a negative impact on you. Food only has one impact when it's the right food. It's positive.
Yeah. So that led me to a desire then to research it further. And over 4 years was how I actually finally got to that point of losing all the weight that I had gained plus some, because my starting weight wasn't that healthy anyway. And then I got to that point where 4 years later I look back and I've celebrated the wins. And how did I celebrate the wins? Well, I went and got one pair of pants to see what it fits like. And I bought one so that as I got to, a little bit lighter, a year and a half later, I bought another pair of pants. And I wore my big pants every once in a while to know what that was like, to understand. My rewards were very different. I never rewarded myself with food. I rewarded myself with changing slowly my belt size, the pair of pants that didn't fit me anymore, the t-shirt that didn't fit anymore, all those types of things, and donating those to the charities around the area. Now, I like what you're saying because it's slow and steady wins the race. And you've got a headline in your post that says, "Why don't people like my plan?" Now, I know you didn't design a plan that people aren't going to like, but it's a reality. People aren't going to like your plan. Tell me why they aren't going to like your plan as opposed to here's a diet, the new fad diet, do that fad diet, you'll lose 20 pounds in 3 days.
Well, I'll be honest with you. You don't put out plans that people intentionally don't like. But the steps that it takes for people to actually accomplish what they want, they don't want to do. And I understand this. It's human nature. Before I even tell you the reasons they won't like it, think about it. How many people do you know who have either gotten fat or increased their size because they were eating too much healthy foods?
Yeah, nobody.
I mean, I've never heard of anyone overeating healthy. And the reason people don't overeat healthy is because when you put the proper food in your body, the hormones regulate hunger, appetite. Everything starts going, and you say, "Oh, I'm kind of getting full. I've had enough." Yeah. When you put the wrong foods in your body, it blocks those hormones. So you just keep putting in and wanting more. And as we were talking about before about sugars, like cocaine, it becomes addictive. So now you turn back to the food. You're still hungry. So what do? You go back to foods you like rather than back to foods you need. And that's what feeds a vicious cycle. So getting back to your question, I actually had to pull up my own list.
Yeah, that's all right.
I put down, it doesn't deliver prepackaged foods. People want easy. Losing weight, and let's take it to the bigger level, becoming healthy, because that's the focus. If you become healthy, you lose weight. It's that simple. If you lose weight, you don't necessarily become healthy. You've got to do it in the right order.
Yeah.
People who suffer bulimia are very thin, many of them. They're not healthy. So you have to understand that it's not an easy process. So having food delivered to your house, first question, are you going to do it for the next 40 years?
No chance.
Probably not. So you're automatically starting something that what you're doing is you're trying to create a short-term effect. You'll get to your weight, and this time it'll be different. Now I can take over. Really? What are you going to eat? How much? How often? You don't have the answers. You've just been delivered food and you've simply been eating it. That's why that doesn't work long term. I don't provide incentive for quick weight loss. I want people to lose weight slowly. They don't want to. It took them years and years and years to put on. They want to lose it in 1 month, 3 months, 5 months.
Yeah.
Those that do, and I tell them right to their face, you'll fail 95% of the time. What makes you think you're going to be in the 5%? What are you doing differently? What's different about your personality? When they don't have answers, basically, they're going to fail. So they have to get the mindset, okay, it's not going to be quick, but it's going to be something where I'm going to have small projects that I'm going to keep achieving success, achieving success, achieving success. That feeds on itself. That's what acts as motivation, and that's what creates the long-term benefits.
And as a chiropractor, you also... And your clients and former clients might be listening, and even people that have been to chiropractic might be listening and watching. If somebody's had a chronic back injury and it's happened over 5 years because they've been sitting in a chair at a desk the wrong way for 5 years, your client, I'm pretty sure they get to that point where they start to understand that you can't unwind 5 years of damage in one chiropractic session alone.
Oh, there's no question. I'll tell you the hardest part, and whether it's food or whether it's mechanical dysfunction of the spine, the same problem exists. People think they're well when what happens? The symptom goes away.
Yeah, right.
The last thing to come, the very last thing, is the symptom. People's bodies begin breaking down, breaking down, breaking down, breaking down without symptoms. The body accommodates, does all these things to try to handle this ridiculous load. And when it finally reaches a point where it can't handle it anymore, symptoms develop. So symptoms are the last thing to come. What's the first thing to go? Symptoms. So the underlying problem still can be there, but now that you've reduced, let's say, inflammation, which is creating the symptom, the underlying mechanical problem can still be there. So maybe there's muscle imbalance. Maybe the joint still isn't moving properly, but there's no symptoms. So they're under the concept, or the impression, he's fixed me. He's wonderful, or she's wonderful. I'm fixed, no more pain. That doesn't determine the end. If you begin to start losing weight, your health issue hasn't been corrected. Some of your weight issue has, but your health issue still is unresolved.
Yeah.
It takes a process. It takes time. And you have to be willing to put the time in. Otherwise, it won't work.
I like that distinction about it's the symptom that comes on last. It's the symptom that goes away first. And a lot of things occur before the symptom that we're not aware of, or we don't notice, or we think is normal. And it's just like we said, like if we go to chiropractor one session, we go back and we sit in the same chair in the same way that we've done in the last 5 years, well, pretty quickly, the same thing is going to happen again. Same with weight loss. If we reward ourselves with that treat, we're going to potentially move down that path of achieving the same outcome, which was the yo-yo part of the diet, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Next point, why won't people like
Next
your
point.
plan?
Let me see. It doesn't provide points. My system doesn't provide, I put down points associated with each food item consumed. Something like a Weight Watchers a lot of times teaches you, here, if you consume these many points, you'll lose weight. Well, that's terrific. What does that translate into? Into understanding what you're eating. You can lose weight eating donuts every day. If you eat donuts every day, I promise you, you will not be healthy. But you can lose weight. And you can stay within the point schedule just eating donuts, and you'll lose weight. This is not a method of lifelong health and wellness and proper weight management. So my system doesn't include that. My system lets you decide what foods you're going to eat. You'll have your own list that you create of foods you like. That's why it works long term. And there's carbohydrates, and there's proteins, and there's fats. And just like the old Chinese menu, you get to choose one from column A, one from column B, one from column C. I make it simplistic. It doesn't have to be this big complicated thing. But they all have foods of quality. So now you're getting all the different sources you need. And that's what leads to, and again, you're not going to overeat because they're all healthy. And then that 10 to 20% room area, we've got the ice cream, we've got the pizza, we've got the fast food, we've got the cake. So we satisfy all components so that you don't feel deprivation and you get to continue to slowly move in a positive direction toward better health and better weight management.
I like what you've also said in the past to me in one of our other episodes. You said, eat what your body needs first, and then after that, eat what you want.
And again, the reason I came up with that was real simple. You'll eat less of the bad stuff because you will have already filled up on the good stuff.
Yeah.
And if you're pushing it away, now you don't feel like someone's telling you how much, we're not cutting these into 3-ounce pieces and you can only have 1 teaspoon worth. No, you eat what you want, but you'll want less because you will have given your body what it needs first. So important.
Yeah. You wouldn't be a very good salesperson because the next thing that you say is, and And the biggest reason why people won't like your plan is because it doesn't create happiness. What?
And you know something? Yeah. Because this is a huge assumption. People think that when they lose weight and they transition their bodies from this large size to what society considers as a very good, healthy, standard size, they assume their lives will transition into these new lives. They won't, unless they take the steps to create changes in their life. Simply losing weight doesn't make most people happy. What it does is it makes them thinner, living the same lives they lived in the past, and they wonder to themselves, I just lost all this weight. This is an amazing thing I just undertook. Very few people are able to do this. Why am I still so unhappy? It's because you also have to focus on your life. It's not just about weight. And that's why I always make the foundation health. And what's part of health? Social living, interaction with people. It's not just about food and exercise.
Yeah. Let's talk about exercise for a moment, though, because I think some people who focus on weight loss will have a real problem, especially if they're going to gym and pushing some light weights and creating some muscle. They're going to be looking at their weight on the scale, and they may not be losing weight because they're going to the gym and they're pumping iron, light weights, and they're creating muscle. Why might that be the case? Why are they not losing weight even though their body might be changing shape? And why should weight, the number on the scale, not be important?
When people start any kind of an exercise program, what they need to do is they need to have, and it's very cheap and very easy to do. There's a handheld device you could even use, or a weight scale you could stand on. It measures how lean your body mass is, which also shows you how much body fat you have. That's a very important starting number, regardless whether you're embarrassed or not. And the reason that's so important is because as you begin exercising, you will, if you're doing it properly, start redistributing lean body mass. You'll be increasing that, and you'll be reducing body fat. Now, in the process of increasing lean body mass, which weighs much more than body fat, the scale and the number may not be affected nearly as much. But if you see that body fat going down, you are doing the right thing. Lean body mass not only is healthier, but requires more calories to burn. So two people, one person who's overweight and one person who's a healthy weight, doing the same exercise, we'll call it aerobic, bicycle riding, at the same speed for the same duration, will burn different amounts of calories. The healthier person will burn more calories. So the bottom line is, the scale counts. You want to lose weight. If you're excessively overweight, you're going to need to lose numbers. But the most important thing is losing body fat, because if you're losing it wrong, and that's why you have to get that measured before you start, because as weight starts dropping, if lean body mass is not increasing, then what you're doing is you're actually retaining body fat. So you're doing something wrong with your exercise.
Yeah. In your post again, the goal is your goal can't be weight loss. We've covered that, right? You must find or create positive channels for stress relief before beginning this program. What's all that about? Why is stress relief going to influence this weight loss program? And why do people need to understand that they might be stressed?
Well, again, going back to an earlier premise, one of the reasons for weight gain is depression. I mean, I think antidepressants is the third leading prescription on the market today.
Wow.
So we know a large percentage of our population is being diagnosed, whether they are or aren't, they're being diagnosed as depressed and on medications. So what people are doing is, like I said before, they're turning to food, feel-good food, as comfort food, as solutions, or at least temporary solutions, to their problem. So the reason I tell people they must find these outlets, these strong, emotional, meaningful outlets, is because these are going to be the new things that people will have in their arsenal to be able to attack depression, anxiety, stress in place of food.
Yeah, right.
If you don't have something to substitute for it, you will turn to it. It's easy, it's fast, it feels good. So by having these other things already waiting in the sidelines here, so that when you face these problems, and in my article I put down these are commonly ongoing problems. You know, it could be marital problems, it could be work-related problems. These are things that constantly keep resurfacing. By having these things to turn to, you have a place to deposit that stress rather than store it, and then attempt to get rid of it using unhealthy means that complicate the situation.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is therapy of some kind, whether it's psychology or emotional coaching or something along those lines to help people deal with things that are causing them stress, that have been doing that for a long time, that they might not be aware of, but that could be the underlying cause. It's kind of like, let's deal with the things that are not in our conscious awareness, and let's see if we can uncover what they are. That will give us some power into going down this path of, trying to get healthier and overcoming the emotional eating side, right?
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, these things, I listed some of them and again, the list I'm about to mention, it doesn't necessarily work with each individual person because some people don't like these things.
Yeah.
So really what you have to do is you have to find your own personal thing. Some people like music, either playing it or listening to it. It's just relaxing to them. So that would be an alternative to turning to food to try to feel better. Gardening, you're creating beauty out in the garden with flowers and colors and getting on your hands and knees and mixing it up with the environment. Some people love that. I turn to the gym. I use the gym as literally a physical means of getting rid of stress. I get to push against heavy resistance, and after I finish a workout, my body is completely at rest. So is my mind the way I do it. So we each have to find our own thing that creates physical and emotional relaxation outside of food. Once you do that, food becomes utilized for what it's intended for, nutrition and information for the body to live on.
Yeah. Information for the body to live on. Let's go into that a little bit. What do you mean by that?
Well, nutrition literally tells cells in our body what to do. A lot of times, there's a new word that's kind of jumping out there called epigenetics. Mm-hmm. And what this is, we're now learning that even though people may be predisposed to various conditions, including cancer, because of genetic makeup, we're learning that genes can be turned on and off. And the number one force for doing this is food. So by providing the proper food intake, we can literally block a lot of these genetic predispositions and take our bodies down a path of health versus a path of disease. So this is where information comes in.
Yeah, you're giving the body...
For instance, tumor growth. If you get a tumor, that tumor starts directing the body to grow blood vessels to it because a cancerous lesion can only get so big, and we're talking about millimeters. Mm-hmm. Once it gets to that size, it must create its own source of blood. So there's a whole neogenesis, a whole neovascular genesis that occurs that brings blood to this cancer. These foods I'm talking about interfere with this process. So this is how you can, and we have cancer all the time. People don't realize our bodies, when our immune systems are healthy, which food is a huge component of, we basically identify cancerous and precancerous lesions and combat them effectively with healthy immune systems. That's how you maintain homeostasis. That's balance. When you start including all these unhealthy foods, we are becoming our own destructive forces. And what we're doing is we're not letting our bodies do what they need, and we're giving the enemy all the tools it needs to overtake us.
And sugar is part of that information cycle that tells tumors to grow. It feeds tumors and it creates growth in tumors. That's what they've found in studies on rats. And also they've found that in studies where they've taken cancerous cells, they put it in a petri dish and just used sugar to keep those cells alive, and they also didn't only stay alive, they also expanded and became more and more and more and multiplied.
Well, when viewers watch this, they'll say, yeah, but that's rats. I'll give you one better. We do it with humans. Maybe now they'll find this more interesting. What do we do with PET scans when we suspect people have cancers? We give them sugar prior to viewing them because we know that sugar is taken up by the body's cancer cells in a ratio of 18 to 1. So what happens is the diagnostic testing intentionally puts heavy amounts of sugar in the body so that we can see where it goes. We now see where these lesions are.
Oh,
now,
my Lord.
If that's not bad enough, and again, I understand why they do this.
Again,
they want to see, they want to define the areas, etc. That, on a certain level, I can totally understand. What I can't understand is why in the oncologist's office they have a candy dish on the way out for their patients to feed on. Why do they want to feed their patient lack of nutrient that's going to potentially make their condition that much worse?
Wow.
It makes no sense.
And they haven't been able, a lot of these people, these doctors wouldn't have made the connection that if we're using the sugar to make the cancer more active so that we can scan it and know where it is, maybe we should tell our clients when they leave not to consume sugar again.
Again, now you're using common sense. That's a dangerous thing.
Oh my gosh, I never knew that. That is such a fascinating thing. People, if you haven't heard anything from the rest of this interview, please pay attention to what Dr. Jonathan just said. Please do that. Oh wow, that's amazing. I lost my train of thought. That has blown me away. Wow. So the next place I was going to go was, does everyone in your house have a bedtime?
A bedtime. Oh my gosh, I'm bad at that. Now I believe in sleep and I believe in the 6 to 9 hours and I get it. But because I write so much and because I want to spend some time with my wife and she goes to bed late, so I start writing after that, I'll go to sleep 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. But I will get my 6, 7, 8, rarely 9, but usually 6, 7, or 8 hours of sleep every night. My wife absolutely gets her sleep. She needs it, so she makes sure she gets it.
Yeah.
Tucker, my beagle, he's flexible. He sleeps whenever we do.
Yeah. So I brought sleep up because it is actually, I feel it's one of the most important things that somebody can do to create a healthy body. Now we know that people who do not get at least 6 hours sleep a night are more likely to become a type 2 diabetic.
Correct.
Amongst other things, they're more likely to, as a result of that, become overweight. They're more likely to suffer from conditions like sleep apnea or obstructive sleep apnea. Tell me, why is sleep important as far as you're concerned with regards to the topic of addressing the root causes of weight gain?
Well, what happens during sleep? It's real basic. You answer the question. It's more than we dream. We sleep because it's restorative. It gives our bodies a chance to recover. We abuse it all day long. We sit too long. We don't eat the right foods. We don't exercise. So there's stasis. We don't have proper vascular flow. Our minds are not being fed properly, so they're having to deal with that. There's constant stresses on the body throughout the entire day, even though you may not feel it. So what do you need? You need a restorative period of time to recover. If you don't do that and then start another day, you're now starting sub-threshold. So how are you supposed to be able to digest food? How are you supposed to use hormones to create metabolic activities? How everything starts breaking down. So this is the whole interaction. Consumers are used to hearing one thing. I ate sugar, so I became a diabetic, which in and of itself isn't an accurate statement, but we like this cause and effect. We're much more complicated than that. Our behavior creates a plethora of positive or negative based on whether we do things in a healthy manner or an unhealthy manner. So, now we know that the gut is tied to the brain. So we know that the immune system is in the gut. We know that serotonin, that we always say is a brain hormone, where's most of it made? In the gut. So there's a complete interaction with the entire body. So if you don't include all the different components of what it needs, you can't expect it to function healthy.
Let's talk about serotonin just a little bit, because I'm not too familiar with it. But my understanding is serotonin is the feel-good hormone?
Yeah, serotonin, dopamine, there are a number of them.
Okay.
And
they end up in the brain.
Right.
Well, you just said that the majority of serotonin, as well as dopamine, if I'm right, is in the gut. And that creates the feel-good, the sort of high, healthy sort of feeling emotions that we get from doing anything that, we interact with during the day. If we're throwing in foods that are not the right foods, if we're doing the junk food kind of diet, is that interfering with the quality and the quantity of dopamine and serotonin that we're producing in the gut, and therefore limiting the amount that's getting in the brain?
First, I want to make sure serotonin is produced in the gut. Dopamine is produced in the brain. I don't believe and I'm not sure, but I do not believe it's okay. Produced in the gut.
Let's talk about
serotonin. I do know is.
Let's talk about that.
But yeah, we eat wrong. What we do is we throw the whole, it's called microbiome. Inside the intestines, we have all these little bacteria. We need them. We're learning we have more bacteria in our body than we have cells. I mean, at like 100,000 to 10 or 1 ratio. I mean, we have much, much more bacteria than we have cells in our body. So what we're learning is the balance of healthy bacteria in the intestines is basically what provides the proper construction of the different hormones that ultimately wind up at the brain that feed us the metabolic pathways we need to function. So by feeding ourselves properly, it provides that health basis for the gut, which is also 70+% of our immune system. So that's the significance of why, and when you put poor foods in, there's a condition called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, where we actually create disharmony. And what that does is that leads to all sorts of intestinal issues. It leads to all sorts of inflammation, which leads to colitis, which leads to Crohn's, which leads to autoimmune diseases, which leads to, this is why I'm saying it's not cause and effect. If we do wrong by feeding our bodies wrong, a whole multitude of things wind up being affected, from intestines to brain to heart, all systems, pancreas, all systems are affected if we don't include the processes that the body itself needs.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating conversation. We're coming up to the end of the episode. Tell me, what does it cost to do the Jonathan Colter version of weight loss?
The cost people are going to like. My fee is $0. I retired from practice, and my passion is health, if people are not quite sure about that. And like I said, I live the lifestyle I try to teach others to incorporate in theirs. I don't try to dictate it to them, but I try to incorporate it, and they manage it to their level. If a person is serious about becoming healthy and in the process losing weight in that order, I'm willing to help people achieve that goal without any kind of financial investment. I do ask them for one thing in turn, that when they succeed, they pass it forward or pay it forward and offer their assistance to someone else who was in their situation or is in their situation that they have now corrected, and they help that person achieve the same type of goal. I can't fix the world, but if I can help fix some people, and they can help fix some people, this pay it forward can fix an awful lot, because our government and our healthcare system isn't going to do it. there's a great deal more motivation to treat chronic disease because it's a for-profit business. So there's much less of an incentive to turn to your own private physician to say, hey, what do I do so I don't need you? They like to work also.
Yeah.
So my method helps people get healthy without costing them.
Now,
but they have to be committed.
Yeah. I knew it wasn't going to cost them as far as you were concerned. But it also, what does it cost them, even if they come across this information, and they're not going to involve Jonathan Colter, Dr. Jonathan Colter, they're going to just do it on their own. What does it cost them to do it on their own?
I don't know if it would require them doing a tremendous amount of learning. Again, I spent over 20 years doing this. Yeah. So to take a person without experience to incorporate all the different components in their life, it would be a challenge. But if they wanted to, look on my website, my blog site.
Start reading.
It goes through the steps and tells them, you address these things, this is the way to do it. If you are capable on your own of actually working a process to do that, all the power to you. Yeah. If you're unable to do it, at least you know you have a resource that you can contact me and I'll help you.
I started my journey about 4 years ago with weight loss, eating healthy, healing my brain, decreasing inflammation, supporting the growth of new brain cells, all that type of stuff, because I had to learn how to walk again. It didn't cost me a dime, just time to look into the different ways. And the reason it didn't cost me any money was because this information is freely available. I didn't buy any supplements. I didn't do anything that I needed to sign up to or I needed to buy. And you might need to sign up to someone's program somewhere. At some point, you might need to download a piece of software, to monitor the food that you're eating on a daily basis, to keep a food diary. Minor things. But it didn't cost me a single thing. I didn't have to join the gym. Everything that I needed to achieve a healthy brain happened for zero down payments.
Absolutely. And I tell people, there's two words in the English language, both starting with P, that literally motivate change. The two words are pain and pleasure. Both are the two motivating factors that change behavior. And here's what I always ask people. If both achieve the same end, why choose going down the route of pain when you can go down the route of pleasure?
That's beautiful. I think that's a great way to end the podcast. Before we do end it, we'll just repeat, Dr. Jonathan, where can people find your blog posts?
It's all about healthychoices.wordpress.com.
Excellent. People who are listening, go there. People who are watching also go there. If you're listening and watching any of the episodes of the Transit Lounge podcast, do us a favor. If you're on YouTube, leave us a comment and also click like. If you're on iTunes, go across and leave us a 5-star review. If you think this episode is going to be helpful for somebody else watching or listening, share it with them. Just let them know that you came across this and you thought that it'd be worth them having a listen or watching. And if you are watching and you're wondering why Dr. Jonathan has a beautiful orange glow, it's not because of the fake tan that he uses. It's because he has a new computer and hasn't worked out the lighting aspect yet. So Dr. Jonathan, it has been amazing to talk to you again. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to catching up again in the near future.